Okay, back again. Hopefully we can get Dami back in the building. Hopefully we get everybody back on because I was really enjoying that conversation. So whilst we wait for Dami to rejoin, apologies, I'm hoping the sound is better now. Can we get a little response in the comment section? Can you hear me better? Is this nice? Is the sound smooth? So for those that maybe have just joined because you've got a new notification.
Hi. Is it any better?
So I know, I don't think so. I know my sound is good, but I'm not sure about yours. But
No,
I'm
this should be.
sure they'll let us know very.
I can hear you.
Good. Well, as long, hopefully. Yes, but I should sort out my equipment. We try, you know. All right, we'll soon.
I need a new phone, maybe.
What we're going to be having soon anyway, obviously, to make up for these little minor issues, technical issues, we're going to be using, we're going to start actually using live locations. So we're going to be getting everybody that's come on, and we're actually going to be doing in face now that obviously COVID is over. You know, like podcast / interviews with different people, which I think will be really good. I'm going to speak to everybody in advance and get some good questions from you all beforehand.
Can you see me, Taz?
I can see you, yeah. So I can see you. Sometimes there's a bit of a delay, so it might have taken a while for you to come on. Okay. But I feel like it's a trick. I feel like they're trolling me because I can hear you fine, so I'm not sure.
Yeah. Guys, you can hear me.
we can hear you better now. They're saying maybe you have to get a new phone. So you know,
yeah, I'll get a new one.
We'll see. But we were talking about your first project.
Yes. Where was I? The first project I've actually managed. So then that.
Do you know? Actually, before you started, let me just give a reintroduction and double check. So basically, today I'm talking to Dami J, who is a chartered project manager, has been doing that for 9 years. Again, we were having a conversation. We've gone over already a lot of the stuff in regards to how she became, where she started studying, how she became chartered, and we've spoken about where she initially started work, and then we're now going to be going into your first project as a chartered project manager. So where was that and how did you find it?
Okay, so my first my first role was as a chartered project manager, was actually doing some work with Marriott, the Marriott brand, under a company that I was working with. So ultimately it was a refurb, which is a cool project. It was over in Kensington as my first one. I can't even remember how many rooms there were. I think there was over 300 rooms across 6 floors. And then also the F&B space, which is the food and beverage, is what they called it, the food and beverage space.
Everyone that comes in that's got letters after their name loves an acronym.
I know, right?
But you're nice, though. You explained it to us, so it's okay.
Yeah, so that was my first project. It was actually kind of challenging. That was probably one of my most challenging, actually, because again, Marriott is a big brand, as we know, so a worldwide hotel brand, and what the issue was is they was not interested in losing any money while we were doing refurbishment work. So then, and also this is Kensington now, the project that I'm working on. So what the plan was that regardless of what we do, we still need to operate that place as a hotel. So we had to essentially manage each of the floors through the construction while people up and down, you know, businessmen and women coming in. So that was my first project. So what we did there was a complete strip out of the whole space, and then brought it up to standard, because Marriott, again, is an old brand. So we brought it up to places where me and you would probably want to travel to if we were flew in from America or something. So yeah, no, that was it. That was it.
And in terms of like the planning, like did they give you a brief? So for example, for something like that, we want to continue operating like whilst the works are taking place, do they kind of give you a brief of like what capacity they need to work at that makes sense for them? Or did they say, look, we want to do it on a floor by floor, or did they expect you to deliver a plan to them?
Yes. So they expect us to deliver a plan to them, to give them an idea of, okay, what can we do with the space that we have, with the time and budget that we have? So we had to work under certain constraints. Again, as the PM, we would appoint a project manager to come on board, and then, sorry, an architect to come on board and basically give us almost the architect's flair to tell us, okay, this is what we can do. And then that would help almost package a scope of works. And in this scope of works will be from like, okay, we want this wall painted, we want this lighting here, and really goes into detail. We would then package all of that up and then get a whole team, like the electrical engineers, all of these guys on board to then start actually designing the work. And every time through all the processes of a construction, we have this thing called REBA stages. I don't know actually what the whole name stands for, but it's an architectural acronym.
Do you know who I know is going to answer this?
Is that?
Accolade Dreaming is going to come on and answer. I guarantee he's going to come on with an answer to that.
Yeah, probably.
I'm gonna have faith in him. He's going to come through and answer that one. Adewale is going to help us out there. But go on. So you were saying.
So through each stage of the project, we would then go back to the client and say, okay, guys, this is what we're going to do. This is roughly about the costs. This, and then every time we'll redesign, make sure that they're happy with it ultimately. So my client was based in Abu Dhabi. So that was another challenge, having them based over there. So they'd always have to come back to check.
You didn't just tell them, fly me out there for a quick meeting.
I tried so many times. They were like,
but they'd rather come to you. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, they'd rather.
I think the other thing that dealing with, because you get a lot, even for us, like when we're busy and we do some like project management or some delivery of projects for other property developers, and people are like, oh yeah, owner occupiers that want to live in the house while it's being developed. I'm like, yeah, no, we don't do that. Sorry, because it's just managing an additional stakeholder.
Exactly.
And particularly with a hotel where you've not just got one neighbor, you've got hundreds of different neighbors in every day that basically effectively their complaints are going to be on your head and stakeholder management. I can imagine why that would have been a really stressful project, particularly as a first project as well.
Honestly, and it was just like people pulling me left and right. So, I mean, with stakeholders on any project, there's always like your neighbor is a stakeholder, like everybody's a stakeholder, especially on this kind of on the project that I worked on first. So it was challenging, but it was good. I mean, I learned so much, even things to do with like fire, from what we're experiencing with what we had experienced with Grenfell, just learning about how important like fire protection is, and
the risk assessments,
honestly,
and even whilst completing the project, because there would have been elements of probably temporary fire measures you had to install whilst the works were taking place.
Exactly. What we're going to do if there was a fire on site, but then we have residents upstairs and we have guests, and then we've got our construction workers. So it's just
you've probably got elements of the property that's not in use, and lifts that people can't use, and stairways that are not supposed to be in use to the public but have to be in use for a fire escape. And
literally,
I can imagine that. It's funny that we'll talk about it sort of later on, because I think there's a couple of questions that I want to answer. But I think one thing that I think I'm going to find interesting is you also have done your own projects, and to understand kind of how that sort of very macro, large scale project transitions to your own smaller scale projects, and back and forth. But we'll go on to that later. So I'm so rubbish at reading names. Damarella, I'm going to say. Damarella has asked, what would you say are the 3 best and 3 most challenging parts of what you do? So 3 good things and then 3 things you found really challenging.
Okay, so I'd say the 3 best, definitely. I love seeing things like looking like, excuse my French, like shit, and then turning around and then actually looking really good. I think that's one of, like, being able to be part of a journey, and like a makeup is something that is, you can transform. I love like that makeover element. A project, and it could be literally from grounds, like literally sand to.
I think that's why shows like Grand Design are so popular. Even people that don't really have an interest in property, because I'd love Grand Design growing up. Like I watched it even when I didn't think I really liked property, and even anything like ground force with the gardens and anything that was just like the great before and afters. It's like,
so
okay.
that definitely one of my my positives. And I love being in a space where I feel like I can implement change. And that's from being a Black woman, that's from being just a person in an industry, like we've just said, from like makeovers, definitely. So where I can implement change, and also where I can learn. I feel like although the industry has been it's a lifelong industry, it's nothing brand new. I feel like I'm still learning, and which is great because I can actually implement it in my own life. So when it's just like, oh, I need to fix something in my house, I know exactly what's going to happen. You can't pull the wool over my eyes. I know how much that is going to cost. So I'm very much aware, and I think that helps. In terms of the negatives, I mean, construction, we start very early on site. It's just, this is just because we have a lot to do in the day. So I'd probably say I've learned to be a better morning person. I wasn't that great at it before. Like actually being on site early, waking up early is fine, but actually being there is probably
active early.
Yeah, literally, not just like rolling over. Yeah, actually being on site. And then I think another one for me is, although they say they are, oh yeah, no, we're diverse and stuff, I think men don't like to be told what to do ultimately by women. In some
I think I don't know if it's just by, I think in general we don't like to be told what to do, and I think a lot of it comes down to ego.
So with that, that is a challenge in itself, because when you just want to get things done. But with me, where I mentioned that I'm a people person, I feel like I have to like rub a little bit. Oh, do you mind? But it's your job. Just can you get it done? Do you know what I mean? But I have to be like, oh, it would be really good if oh, don't cost me for that. Don't charge me for that. Go on. Do you know what I mean? Like really just trying to get them. So that is long, because sometimes I just get it done, mate.
Yeah. It's that balance though, isn't it? Like when they say you catch more flies with honey than you will with vinegar or something. So.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. I wouldn't say there's too much that I don't like.
Okay. That's good. And then before we move on, prayers and gratitude was saying, before it cut out, you were talking about a project in Selfridges. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay,
so that project, project was prior to me getting chartered. And that was actually what I used as my case study. So within Selfridges, what I had to do was we had to replace the chillers in the basement. And as you know, Selfridges is older than, I don't know how old, but it's a very old store. And so they had chillers in their basement. A chiller is basically, think of a really large scale air conditioning unit. So it's the whole building, the back of staff areas, the whole space. So we had to figure out how we could remove those chillers, break it down, order the actual chillers from Dakin, who are based the manufacturer is based in China, and get them on site, making sure Selfridges lost no money. They didn't care what we had to do. We just had to replace those chillers. So again, that was a good job, a very expensive one. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. And then let's sort of fast forward, because you are now working for, go on, pronounce it.
So yeah, actually I work for myself. I do consulting for various construction companies, development companies such as Rehoboth, where I did the Hill Hub with them. So that again was the police station conversion into a co-working space.
Co-working space. And so how long have you been consulting for? Like, so effectively you have your own limited company now?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. And you consult for that. How long have you been independent for?
For 2 years now.
And how did you find the transition, and what actually made you go from working for a company to wanting to be independent?
So it's mad, because really I love doing all the big stuff, but ultimately I wanted to do the smaller things. So I wanted to work with more bespoke, where I can actually have interactions with the client, and it's not like a whole body and not a whole chain of like, oh yeah, we have to get approvals. So and I just wanted to just do it by myself, to be honest. I thought doing smaller scale stuff was more suitable for me and my personality. And yeah, So
It, it's funny actually because I speak to quite a lot of people that have gone through the academic route and are really qualified and know loads and have worked for, have delivered literally hundreds of millions slash, £500 million worth of projects
yeah,
for various different developers. But when I speak to them, a lot of people, obviously, you don't become a £1 billion developer through working through that company. So then you
mm,
actually have to take it all the way back and strip it back and either start working directly with, smaller developers or start actually doing your own developments. And so I think it's
yeah,
very interesting because I think that's what's strange or funny for me about property because I look at people like yourself and Adewale is a good example and loads of other people that have got these like a massive industry, large scale experience. And I'm
yes,
looking at you guys like, oh, I want to do all of that stuff that you've been involved in. But
yeah,
then vice versa, a lot of the time, I have conversations with people that are like, oh, actually, I want to be doing my own projects and kind of do what you've been involved in. So I think
exactly.
definitely the strength of networking and having conversations and building relationships with people means that there's so much that I can learn from you for what I'm trying to achieve and vice versa. I think these conversations are really important.
Yeah, definitely, I agree.
What advice would you give to a new project manager joining like a large scale renovation project?
Hmm. I would say my best advice, or one of my things, would say be getting stuck into the detail. I feel like
Hmm.
as a PM, you need to know everything. Like, there's nothing you shouldn't know. Okay, what's the budget? What's that? Okay, how much have you costed for, I don't know, flooring, tiling? Just being really specific on the details. Um, and reading every email. I'm guessing this is like if you're in a corporation or something. So
Mm,
being very on top of it, asking questions, and
mm,
just being specific with detail. It's weird because I don't feel like I'm a very detailed person, but I clearly am. Like, I read everything. You can't miss nothing. And that's one of the advice that I would give, is just really being all over everything. And I know that's
yeah.
very easy to say, but if you're
No,
reading
but I think that
documents, yeah,
I think that's it, and that goes for pretty much anything. Like if you want to be good and like sort of taking something on that maybe slightly outside of your comfort zone, really get involved. Don't shy away from. I think the first thing you said, like ask the questions, like want to understand everything, sort of why
yeah,
everything, like why are we doing this? Because it's
exactly.
great to know that okay, yep. So I don't know. For example, we've got to do a different type of foundation or a different type of floor. We're doing like a block and beam floor rather than something else. Okay, why are we doing that? Why did we have
Exactly.
not just okay, yeah, we do it in this order? Because you could then start saying, yeah, we've got to do that in every job going forward without understanding why specifically
Right.
you had to do it in this job. And I think definitely the whys and asking questions and
Is
your
massive.
advice of just really reading into stuff is
Literally.
massively helpful for
Yeah.
anybody who's trying to learn more about any specific vocation. So then, when did you actually do your first project? Because obviously you've also done some of your own projects. Like when did you first do your first project?
I mean, I'd say outside of work, I've done my first project when I bought my first house.
Yeah.
So that was definitely a learning curve. And it's weird because it's just like you may know everything well, I don't
Mm.
know everything, but you may be very knowledgeable about the industry. But until you actually do stuff on your budget, on your understanding the quality that you're
Yeah,
dealing
your
with.
your budget hits a little bit different.
I'm not dealing with like £50 million budgets. I'm not dealing with £100 million
Mm.
budget. I'm dealing maybe 12K. I have
Yeah.
to get everything done. Do you know what I mean? So that was what I would say would have been my first proper budget project. But then outside of that, I'd say Rehoboth, actually, my first
Okay.
major development project with Rehoboth
Hmm.
at the Hill Hub would have been my first big one, other than
Yeah.
the little ones. Yeah.
And that's I think it's important that particularly buying your first home. When people talk about okay, what was your first project? Like obviously a home for some people, a home is just a home. Like literally, it's the same as renting almost. Like I just want to buy somewhere and I want a place to live, and they're not looking at it as an investment. But if we've got our like investor hats on, then a lot of the time your biggest, best, and most efficient way of utilizing your capital is your first residential property. Because if
Literally.
you can buy somewhere for a like minimal 5-10% deposit and be able to leverage that amount because you've got like a great job and you've got significant, you know, amounts that you can borrow from the bank, and you've got like a 90% loan to value. And then you can get a significant uplift because of the way you manage your project. You can then see that in terms of a return on investment, you would look at a lot of future projects and be like, I wish it was like my first one.
Exactly. Trust me. So yeah, and even on my first project, in terms of my first house that I bought, that alone, there was so much learnings as well that you get. Like I'm guessing with everybody, but where that was a buy-to-let almost, it was very specific in terms of, you know, I can't spend above this budget because I just don't have it. So it's like working at work. Well, if you know, if you overspend, it's just like, yeah, they say there's no money, but there's always.
And also, yeah, it's like the money they're making. So, for example, if we go back to your project at the Marriott, yeah, they don't really want to overspend. They set a budget, but they've also said we're not closing the hotel because they're making thousands and tens of thousands and potentially hundreds of thousands on a daily basis or weekly basis. So there's so because they're making so much money, they can justify spending so much money. But when you're working on a tighter budget, particularly on a buy to let, where your return on investment or your yield is really based on how much you spend, that extra £1,000 spend might take you 3 months to get back in rental payments. So you've got to be a lot tight. And then you've also got to think about, because it's also about like the uplift and the ceiling prices in the areas, you have to then sort of think about, okay, like if I spend, do I even need to justify doing the bathroom? Because the bathroom might not be to your taste at the moment, but it might be fine from a rentals and somebody else loves it. So you have to think, am I actually going to get a return, or am I just doing this out of indulgence?
Exactly.
So it's a completely different, the spec isn't so clear. There's a lot of gray areas. Whereas with a client, they're like, right, do this. You're like, look, you've told me to do this. But when you're the client and the developer and the project manager.
Literally, and the cost consultant, everything. It's just like, so.
It's different. Okay. And then, so moving on to Rehoboth and the Hill Hub, which the Hill Hub, for those that don't know, is a really great space. It's in Dartford, conversion of a previous prison / magistrates court, or police station / magistrates courts, but they had to have cells as a police station, into a co-working space. So it's definitely transformed something that was maybe having a detrimental impact on lives to something that's actually helping and build dreams. So check that out if you haven't. I follow them, so if you just type in the Hill Hub, you'll find them if you want to look into what they're doing. But that space, again, you know, although they're a much larger scale developer than myself, they're still, you know, what you would call like a small to medium scale sort of development company. So I'm assuming in comparison to some of your previous clients, like a Marriott or a Selfridges, their cost control and budgetary constraints were going to be a lot more relative to those previous projects. So how did you find that transition of working for a smaller scale company?
That was actually quite difficult again, because like you've just explained, the budgets, although they say, okay, we've got £13 million to do one renovation, it's just like, okay, well, if we go over it, which no one really wants to do, especially as a project manager, you're meant to come in on time, under budget, with good quality. There's always something there. There's always, okay, if you're late a few days, all right, you know, we could figure out how we could, you know, get on with it. But with a smaller developer, it's just like, no, every day is costing me money.
Every day I've got my bridge, every day is costing this amount of money.
Exactly. So like every day things were delayed. For example, if like building control. So the building control would came down on Rehoboth, on the Hill Hub, and was just like, no, I'm not quite happy with that. No, you need to change it. So then obviously that is a number one, a cost, a change to the actual construction, a change to the, design. And then also another day late that the Hill Hub can rent that space. So that was very difficult, because I'll be like, can't you just find the money? But it's just like, no, I can't just find the money, because we have a set amount of budget for this project. Whereas with the larger scale projects, I'll be like, right, this is what needs to happen. It's like, I almost didn't even know where the money came from, if that makes sense. because
Yeah.
it was always there.
They had different, like, it's like, and it's also, I guess, like any industry, that's kind of like understanding your client, because if a client's number one deliverable is time, they're not going to be as concerned if it goes over by, 4%, because time is, look, can we finish on time? Whereas if somebody's number one concern is budget or quality, then they're going to be less concerned with time, but like, look, like, can you keep us within this?
Yeah.
So, and then going forward, like, where do you see yourself going in the future? What type of projects do you want to work on?
Yeah. Oh, so I want to do more bespoke type projects like the Hill Hub, like I don't know, small, maybe like a 9-bedroom apartment building, just like really kind of bespoke niche.
You were supposed to come to one of my sites actually.
I
What,
know
that you
what
did?
happened.
I listen. So I'm starting. I've got five flats in Croydon,
Okay.
four in Coulsdon, and then like a demolition and a rebuild of another 5 units. They're all starting sort of this year. So one
Okay.
one of those sites you can come on and you can do my stage analysis to see how well me, as I have 0 letters before my name, zero university experience in regards to property. So you can
That's
come and grill and examine and tell me all the stuff that I've done inefficiently and how I can become a much better project manager. Is that fair? And as a
absolutely.
trade-off, obviously, you can come and see the sort of the practical as a developer. This is why maybe I've done it this way as opposed to another
Exactly.
way. Um,
Yeah, that'd be good. So I'll be looking forward to that.
no, so that would be good. Okay, so yeah, so you're saying so more of these same types of projects, more bespoke stuff like that. Some people
Yes.
are asking when you're going to be hiring because obviously your owner. So would you take
When I,
like would you let anybody if you've got a project, would you kind of are you interested in giving back? Would you let somebody else maybe sort of
of course.
at an intern age just sort of maybe just come on for a couple of days just to understand what it's like?
What I do. No,
Because I think
definitely.
for a lot of people, they kind of have like the word, project manager just sounds so vague, and they hear it in so many different industries
This is
that
it.
education's quite weird. You're expected to study for like 2 years, then another 4 years, then get qualified for another 2 years,
Yeah.
and you don't know if you like it yet because you don't have any practical experience until you're like 6 years in. So I think if people like yourself can give some young people a sort of like a little look behind the curtain as to what it's actually like,
Yeah.
and maybe they'll work out that this is exactly what I want to do, or I want to do
Yeah.
something slightly different.
No, exactly. Yeah, no, that's definitely something I'll be
Yeah.
happy to
Because
do.
definitely, I think that's something I want to start doing. Obviously, I've got some young boys interning with me, and then I've got
Okay.
like my full time they're like very young, sort of 12, 13, and I've got like a full time intern who's 21 who works closely with me. He's now a business partner because he's sick. We got Gio that does loads of stuff with us. But yeah, so definitely, I think that everybody I get on, I'm going to try and get them to commit to offering a couple of hours of their time or
No
a couple of
pressure.
days
Yeah.
to really help some people get into the industry, because I think it is more important that we do sort of start to shift the narrative, start to show that there are more opportunities out there.
I agree.
Um, so I think that's good. Next week, I have my guy Bez from Meta Design. So he basically does all of my granite and stonework installation and marble for the kitchens. He's going to be opening a brand new shop round the corner from me. I'm going to be going to that open day. I'm going to invite everybody else to come down. I'm going to try and get some sort of discount code, the Property Bike has your discount code to make sure that you can all get these kitchens, vavavoums, and these bathrooms, vavavoom, because they're really nice, brother. Dami, we appreciate having you on. Thank you for
Thanks.
taking your
Thanks for
time this
having me.
Sunday. I appreciate everyone else for logging in. If you're not already, make sure you head over to the YouTube and follow, subscribe, turn notifications on, and all that good stuff to make sure you don't miss out on all the latest videos. If you've just caught up and want to listen back, this is going to be in 2 parts because we had a couple of technical difficulties, but it will be
Sorry.
on both Spotify podcasts, Apple podcasts, and Amazon podcasts. So wherever you want to listen, you'll be able to do that. Again, and make sure if you are interested or do want to contact or engage with Dami further, that you add her up and speak to her very soon. So what's your Instagram, Dami, for those that are
Yeah.
listening later?
So you can find me at Dami_J with 2 I's. So DAMII_J.
Amazing. So I've been Kaz, you've been Dammy. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.